Hi, my name is John, and welcome back to my channel. I'm here to do a brand new 2025 movie review, and the movie's called Screamboat.
We're all gonna die.
When their dream voyage turns into a nightmare, they'll have to work together to survive the night.
This movie is directed by Stephen Lamort. This movie is starring David Howard Thornton, Allison Piddle, Jesse Posey, and Amy Schumacher. The basic overview: a late-night boat ride in New York City on the Staten Island ferry becomes a struggle for the survival when seemingly a harmless mouse transforms into a dangerous monster, and the passengers on board must fight to stay alive. As we just discussed in my Popeye the Sailor Man review, many beloved characters from the past, primarily cartoons, are reaching their public domain, which means there's no more copyright claims on them. They can be used in any way, any form, any shape, how, and nothing will happen to the people who are using these characters legally. Since that's been going on, we have been getting an onslaught of new movies starring these beloved childhood characters. And as I've said before, I'm not sure I'm a fan of this trend. However, it is starting to grow on me a little, and that's partially because some of these movies are now getting done a little bit better. And Screamboat, starring Steamboat Willie, being portrayed by David Howard Thornton, the guy who's been portraying Terrifier for the last just about 10 years. This one is clearly another step up. I'm going to go over my basic feelings of this movie, and then I'm definitely going to make this one a spoiler one. We'll get into some spoilers at the tail end of the video, and I'll definitely give you a warning. Before I get into the negatives and the positives of this movie, I'd like to change it up a little bit and just mention here at the beginning of the video, if I'm new at the station, been 3 months running, doing horror content, horror movie reviews, Halloween discussions and such, top 10 lists and all that. I would really appreciate if anyone who's enjoying this content or likes to see this type of content, if they could please like and subscribe to this station. Thank you. Now let's get into it. So what makes this movie stand out more than some of these other ones that have been coming out over the last few years of the public domain horror movie slashers? Straight up the quality. So when I first heard about Screamboat, and it was another Mickey Mouse or Steamboat Willie slasher, I thought, oh gosh, here we go, another one of these. I recently found out after watching Popeye that there's 3 Popeye slashers out already. So I was concerned. But when I saw that the guy who plays Terrifier, David Howard Thornton, was in this, I was like, well, this guy's been pretty successful recently doing Terrifier, and he does the Terrifier in a very mimey clown way, and I thought he's probably gonna bring that to this character, and he does. The mouse in this one, the design overall is much better. Surprising how small it was, and they had to do a lot of camera work since David Howard Thornton's a pretty big guy, to create this illusion of him being kind of a mouse size, not a real mouse, but like a big for a mouse, but he's still small. He's like 1.5 feet. And then he kind of reminded me, the mouse actually in the face, in the makeup and in the little fur and everything, he kind of gives off this the Grinch vibe. He's got, it just seemed like the Grinch. I went to this movie with my son. He said the same thing. Oh, Dad, the mouse looks like the Grinch a little bit. Also, I would say, since David Howard Thornton plays Steamboat Willie Mouse, there's so much more character to the actual thing. The mouse in Mousetrap was so just flat. It was just some random adult walking around with a mouse mask. That's all it really was in that movie. And there was just no character, no anything to it. He just stood there. David Thornton does there's a lot of noise effects, like the Mickey Mouse sounds that Steamboat Willie would make and that Mickey Mouse himself would make get played into this. And he also, like, when he's on the verge of his kills, he's whistling, and he's whistling these childhood tunes. He's whistling like nursery rhyme songs, and in one part he's whistling like Happy Birthday, because in the one girl in the movie it's her birthday. And it's these whistles that he does, they're very creepy, and it was pretty neat. It was a pretty neat addition to, kind of gave me that whole feel of, like, in Popeye, the characters would smell the pipe smoke in advance. It was kind of like a little warning. Well, in this movie, it's the whistling. The mouse is a little critter whistling, and he's about to get you. So most likely this was a fairly low budget film, but what they did, and it did show in some of the practical effects, but what they really did was amazing with what they had. There was some really great cinematic shots. All right, so the backstage to this movie, where this is taking place is on the Staten Island Ferry, which is New York. There are a lot of really great New York skyline scenes, a lot of New York. This movie praised New York in a way. Many of the characters are New Yorkers, and they're rough, the thick accent New Yorkers, really tough characters, but funny as well. So, like, the characters were definitely a step up for many of these movies. Definitely great character work in a lot of, and there wasn't, other than David Howard Thornton, I guess, and Amy Schumacher, there wasn't really anyone known in this. They were all, people that are just probably getting their starts or whatever, but there was a lot of characters in this movie. Plenty of them to get knocked off. Steamboat Willie in this has a high kill count. As a slasher, all the main ingredients are there. I mean, it is the steamboat or the ferry boat is moving at night. It's foggy. They're fairly isolated because the fog set in, and the boat technically wasn't supposed to leave, but had clearance. And the boat's going up the Hudson, and there's just a really great atmosphere. It was a really great, just like in Popeye, the Spinach Factory was a great atmosphere for Popeye. This steamboat or ferry boat is a great atmosphere for this mouse to be terrorizing on. I'd say on the positive side for slasher tropes, there's, you had the looming old man that tells creepy stories and knows more about the mouse and gives the backstory to Steamboat Willie and the ferry. And then you have the fodder characters, a ton of fodder characters. And then in this one, I just thought it was funny, and the way they blended the whole Disney themes in here. There is a group of girls that are celebrating their birthday, and they're kind of this annoyance to our main girl character, who I was calling the redhead from that 70s show. She just looked like her to me. But these girls are drunk. They've come from a birthday party at a bar, and they're boarding on the Staten Island Ferry, and they are all dolled up in dresses, and they are each designed to be a Disney princess, and I thought that was hilarious. They had Jasmine, Belle from Beauty and the Beast, Ariel from Little Mermaid, and Cinderella, and I'm not sure, I'm still trying to nail down who the fifth one was. But every one of these girls was a Disney princess, but they were this ratchet drunk New York version of a Disney princess, and it was hilarious. And many of these characters, either the princesses or many of the side characters, were running off extremely famous Disney movie lines like "Just keep swimming" or "Part of your world."
This Jungle Cruise going! I want to be where the people are.
It is a small world after all.
One of the little princesses loses a slipper, loses her shoe. Cinderella loses her shoe in one scene. It just very funny, very funny. It blended well. I mean, it was hokey, but it was still funny. This movie wasn't trying to be anything but what it was. There seems to be, like, the main protagonist is a guy and a girl, and then there's a couple other characters that you know are kind of most likely going to make it to the end. There was a little boy with his mom. The little boy is, you know, probably 8 or 9. I don't know why he's on this ferry in the middle of the night, but that's another thing. A couple other of the likable, like, boat crew people that are in there. I'm like, all right, these are the people that are going to be the ones that survived at the end, and most of them do, and they're all very likable, amusing characters. This movie really was entertaining. It wasn't like boring. It was a decent pace. I mean, there's a lot going on in it. I mean, this mouse definitely tears the boat up for sure. I mean, there's one of the scenes he gets like half of the people on board. So I guess when I think of like Friday the 13th and how the story plays out of, you know, Jason and everything, and how they tell the story in a campfire in one of the movies, and just that whole atmosphere, they did very well with that here. Just the way the mouse is presented, it's kind of a little bit at first and then more and more and more. Alright, so let's switch this over to where I'm a little mixed, or the negatives on this one. And there's definitely a few glaring ones. I would say, let's start off with talking about the gore. Obviously, David Howard Thornton from Terrifier is in this, so I was already expecting it to be a certain level of gore. If he's putting himself in this picture, I'm thinking, yeah, he's a gore guy. He loves the gore. And for the majority of the kills, the gore is okay. Few of the kills, the gore is a little extreme. Again, when you get gore just to be gory, or just to have that shock value, or it's so gory, and I would say this is very gory, and because of the low budget, it does show like it is fake in some of the parts, like some of the prosthetics, some of the mask or whatever they use, the blood even, just in some parts it looked pretty decent, in other parts it was very, very fake looking. So the gore here, done well in parts, but then also, for me, just a little too extreme in some of the scenes. Also with that comes some of the shock value of it, and there's one kill where it's all about shock value. There's a couple on board who they're hot and heavy together, and they're getting it on in one of the areas, and the mouse comes, and the kill, I'm not going to get into the complete detail of the kill. I'll just say the kill is very sexual in nature, and I just thought this is really just for shock value. And it was comedic. It was meant to be comedic because parts come off and things happen, and it comes back a little bit later as well. So I'm like, yeah, it was funny somewhat. Now I can tell you, since this was a limited release, the movie theater was actually fairly crowded where I was, and the people were enjoying it. Even the gory parts and the shock value parts. I mean, it seemed like majority of the people in my theater were laughing and having a grand old time, and I was, like I said, I was with my son. We were having a grand old time as well. I guess as another negative I can say, it's extremely predictable about how things are going to go, where the storyline kind of goes. And what transpires, and I personally didn't hate the predictability as much, because it's slashers, when they become predictable, I kind of like it a little bit. I like when slashers overall can be predictable, but then maybe there's one part that kind of flops it over and gives a twist. So before I get into any spoilers, and I don't think I have too much spoilers to spoil on this one, but I do want to talk a little bit about the ending. I will recommend overall, for these public domain slashers, this one stands out even better than Popeye. Okay, so the only spoiler I really have is at the end of this one, the mouse. So the mouse kind of is falling in love with the main star a little bit, like the girl. I guess he's, you know, Steamboat Willie is like Mickey, and in his eyes, she's the Minnie. And it comes into play at the end of how they defeat him, because, I mean, this mouse was really a good serial killer. I mean, he's fast, he sneaks in, he's small, he's hard to see at first. And then you know, of course, there's some, you know, you have to think outside the box a little bit with this one, because he's so small, and I think, how is he this strong? Is he like supernatural or what is? They never really get into that. But he definitely, some of the kills, like one of the men is extremely large, and I thought there's no way. I mean, this mouse could be stepped on. He's 1.5 feet. One of the guys is bigger and burlier than I am. I mean, really big, and I think he could have just picked this mouse up and throw him overboard. You know, at the end, the main star, the girl, she dresses up like Minnie Mouse, or, you know, Steamboat Willie's girlfriend has a little polka dot design on her bag that she turns into like a little dress, and it was cute, and that's kind of how they lure him. And you know, he gets a hold of a young kid, and you know, he throws the kid overboard, and there's two girls left, and then the one boy is like, he's kind of like a prince. So like everyone's like a prince or a princess, Disney princess or Disney prince. Like the main character, the guy who's like starts off as like almost a janitor, you know, as people get killed off, his rank moves up. You know, the captain gets killed, so everyone in the ranks moves up. So the first mate becomes the captain, this guy becomes the first mate, then the first mate gets killed by the mouse, and then this guy ends up being the captain at the end, and he's the, you know, the love interest for the main star, the girl. Selena was the girl, and I think, oh, I already still forget the boy's name. I think it was like George or Pete, maybe Pete. I don't know. Everything kind of seemed at a Disney reference. So they end up getting the mouse at the end by luring him, and the girl, the main girl, kills him or maims him, I guess, because at the way end, through the during the credits, like a after credits scene, there are little things that pop in there, and one of them is this visual of two mice. One is the girl and one's the boy. So Steamboat Willie and Minnie, or whoever the girl partner is for him. So there's definitely, and it says at the way end, we'll be back. So there's probably going to be a sequel to this, and I'll probably go out and see it, because we're going to get down to business on this one. Overall, this really was decent. I'm giving this one a good burger. We're going to give it a good burger, but it's going to be on the low end of the good burgers. You know, because it definitely has some weaknesses that drag it down. But overall, I like this one. It was done well. It was amusing. It was entertaining. I think that's what brings it up for me. The entertainment value throughout the movie, and all the Disney references, and I love New York. I live relatively close to New York. All the New York references, and I know some New Yorkers. I am originally from New York, not New York City, but New York area, and that's how New Yorkers are. A little extreme. You know how, like, in some of those, like, the Ted movies and some of these Mark Wahlberg movies, they describe these Boston characters, and they're always very extreme Boston characters with the extreme accents. Here, this one's doing the same thing with New York, and I recognize those accents. And most of these characters who put the accents on, I think they're either really New Yorkers that they have hired in there because they clearly filmed in New York, or, you know, these people can put on some pretty decent New York accents. You know, the Disney princesses, their accents were almost funny. I mean, this one's a good burger with ketchup. Little too much ketchup, but it's still a good burger with a little too much ketchup. So that's the final rating. Thank you guys for watching. I will be back doing more movie reviews and top tier lists, so please join me.
This boat is cursed. We're all going to die.
You said that last week and the week before.
I heard stories about a monster that lurked in the underbelly of the ferry. Steamboat Willie.